Good afternoon and welcome back to Gulfstream Park. Thank you for joining us here on Gulfstream today. And boy, what a day it was yesterday, all throughout the card on Sunshine Millions Day. We had 12 races, some really spectacular performances, and it was capped off by an excellent night at the 45th Annual Eclipse Awards. You and I were both there. You presented Top Jockey, Eclipse Award jockey for Javier Castellano, and of course I did steeplechase as well with Dalawan, but a very interesting day indeed.
Actually, you made me look smart, because you had told me that Dalawan was a half the Delamy, and nobody seemed to know that. So actually, I did steal it from you, but I gave you credit eventually.
Oh, thank you.
I didn't want to just steal all the credit, but it was a fun night.
And then I have to give credit to Joe Clancy for that.
Yeah, well, Joe Clancy's our man when it comes to steeplechase racing. He's the guy, no doubt about it.
Absolutely, but it was a great day indeed. A big night for the Zayats, obviously American Pharoah, Bob Baffert. They sweep the card, I would say, or at least
I was shocked. I really thought he might win one award, but it just turned out it was all about American Pharoah, not surprisingly. And it was a year about American Pharoah, so why shouldn't we be celebrating them?
And congratulations to some of our local people as well, especially the jockey colony here. Tyler Gaffalione getting Top Apprentice, and Javier Castellano his third straight Eclipse Award. We've seen some fantastic riding from both of them so far this week.
Right, I agree. I've been very impressed with Tyler with what I've seen from him. He seems to be a really good rider, and it's not easy at this time of the year. He's obviously got the local connections to get good mounts, but this is not the group he rides against during the rest of the year. This is a top-class riding colony, and he's more than holding his own. And, you know, we've said it before about Javier. What impresses me the most about him, and I said this to him and I saw him later the night, Javier rides these $6,000 claimers down here like he rides Grade 1 races. And, you know, he's a guy who cares about the horse player, and he rides his horses and he gives the absolute best. He's going to ride some horses that aren't good enough, but they're not going to lose. Every rider's going to make mistakes sometimes, but it's not because he's not prepared on any horse he rides.
I completely agree with you on all facets of that. We'll take a look and now at today's card. We have 11 races on tap today, and we do have some featured wagers and carryovers, and we started all off in race 1 on today's card. That carryover in the Rolling Super High 5 is over $20,000. I would imagine this bet will be hammered in today's first race, which is off the turf. All of our races are off the turf this afternoon. As we get into race 1 as well, it does kick off the 50-cent pick 5. Race 6 later on does kick off the 20-cent Rainbow pick 6, a carryover over $35,000 in that featured wager. And as we get into race 7, does start the 50-cent late pick 5. Once again, a reminder, we do have special holiday racing tomorrow, first post at 12:35 p.m.
There are 22 races left through the end of tomorrow. Plenty of action, plenty of opportunities to squander your winnings or get out if you're losing. And, you know, we also should point out the track had been playing since Friday, and it continued through yesterday's card to be very much an outside-y track. Obviously, we had a huge storm. It was really weird out, wasn't it? The way the light around 7:30 in the morning, and then we got the big storm, washed us off the turf. I don't know if the track will change, but keep it in mind.
Definitely keep it in mind. And as you said, 22 races between today and tomorrow. That's my lucky number, so hopefully we can get lucky. We'll take a look at today's opener. And you did come up with a pick 5 ticket here, so talk us through your sequence.
Well, we'll try to get the action going in the pick 5 here using the 10, 12, and 13 to open it up, staying to the outside. I am going towards the inside in the next race, but with the 1 Candy's Lady, who's my top pick, at least we can hope that horse comes off the rail and try to make the way through the sequence. It's not an easy sequence. It's a $36 play, and you sort of can mix and match, play multiple tickets. And I hope that people look at those, use them as a guide. You know, maybe there's a horse or two in there that you hadn't considered that you want to throw in at some level in your play, because they're not easy to negotiate, and today's not going to be easy. But I feel like today, more than Friday, the races are kind of open. There are a lot of favorites winning on Friday, where there might be some chances to get clever in some of these races off the turf.
Yes, clever indeed, especially the first race kind of figures, but as we get into the latter half of the card, some of the maiden races that have come off the turf are wide open as well. So we'll take a look at today's opener and allowance optional claimer. And the main track only entrant I thought was even more intriguing now, the 12, Take Time to Pray. This is a horse that I'll be choosing. And, you know, looking at this race as a whole, I'm taking a horse that has a lot of speed. 5 furlongs, you need a horse that has a little bit of pace. This horse draws from the outside, should be able to get into a decent position from that outside post. And again, he's got some serious main track performances.
He does, and I put him second, and he's the horse to beat. But the 4 has speed, the 5 has speed, and the 13 have speed. And the other thing that's weird about time to pray, he may not love a wet track, this horse.
Yeah,
and I think
true.
that's a real concern about him. And it's one thing if you're getting a better price. And I think by post time, my top selection, the 10, will be a better price because his wet track showing isn't as good, but it's not as dichotomous as the performances, because if you look at the 2 wet track races showing, both of them at Gulfstream Park for the 12, they're both not good, and that's a concern. With the 10, he's got a little Jekyll and Hyde thing going on. He ran well enough to win this race 2 back, coming from a little off the pace. He obviously didn't run well last time, but I thought he fit fairly well and was a reasonable alternative.
Well, you could definitely make the case. He's my 4th selection as well, but the 10, my boyfriend's back. You go back to some of his prior races, and last time out, or 2 starts back in November, that was his first start coming off a bit of a freshening, and he ran his highest Beyer speed figure on form. So by virtue of past performances, you would think that there might be a little bit decline in his form second off. So he should be sitting on a big race today. Interested to see how he's going to like an off track. But you also throw in the 13 Mitos and Leyendas. This is a horse who obviously was entered for main track only as well.
Yeah, the problem with this horse is he's got that big Beyer figure last time, and all the other races are kind of slow. His race 2 back gives him a little chance to get a piece, but only his last race makes him fast enough, but he did draw outside.
The 4, Dr. J-Dub, I didn't really like this horse. I liked him a little bit on the turf. A first time off the claim for Maria Borelli. Go back to some of his prior main track performances, and they were much tougher against Maiden Special Weight Company. And some of the Beyers that he ran that day could definitely pick up a piece, but he does figure to be part of the pace and kind of inside pace.
Inside the pace, I agree.
We'll move on to the second race on the card, a 6,250 open claimer, 5.5 furlongs on the main track. Make the rider Eddie Dominguez on the 5. Skippy is back, and I figured we'd be all over the place because, you know, this is a very tricky race. You always get these types of tricky races as well. What did you like about the 1, Candy's Lady?
You know, a lot of what happens in these races is I'm comparing some of these races to a Jackson Pollock picture where there's just a scatter over the screen.
So much going on.
And, you know, you're eliminating and you're working through and you make some ideas, and then I come back to it and I put some picks together, and then a day later I review it and I can't figure out why I like the horses I did. With the 1, Candy's Lady, I was just looking for something in here. This horse legitimately broke 4 lengths or more behind the field last time out, and it didn't seem to be an issue. It seemed like just caught the horse the wrong time, kind of got stuck in the gate. You got to switch to Javier off the previous riders on a horse I can make an excuse for that hopefully can improve off of that race. I was just looking for something.
I was looking at this race too, and I thought that there was going to be a decent amount of pace in here because we have a couple different horses like the 6, Maze Treasure Trove. Skippy is back, should be relatively close. Even the Corinthians Glory, sure. She won't be too far off the pace. So I went with a horse who has proven to me that she can close from off the pace a little bit, and that was the 4, Flashy Z. Now, I do go into this pick with a little bit of trepidation, primarily because she's obviously a mare that's on the decline. She hasn't run her past two races are nowhere near what she was running earlier this year, but she has won against upper-level open claimers. Hopefully some of that back class can resurface.
I struggled with her as well. She can definitely win this race, and I think it's a race. Keep an open mind on this race when you're playing it.
Please do. We'll move on to race 3, a maiden $35,000 event, and originally carded for the turf. Will run on the main track at 5 furlongs, and this is one of the maiden races that can get a little bit tricky now on the main track. The 14, Zen's Sunrise for Chloe Bradley, or Ramon Preciado, obviously serving a 21-day suspension. This horse figures to be part of the pace.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see how she does substituting for Preciado, a high percentage trainer. Horse was in a very tough spot, dueling last time out off of the claim, now in a more reasonable spot, draws a good outside position, and just thought this horse was a very logical horse in the race.
I agree with you. The 4, Zulu Tango, is an interesting one. The only try on the main track was going a mile on a wet fast track, and that was coming off a freshening since October. But this horse got a lot of attention, or at least decently bet there on the main track debut as a favorite at 3-1. That was the first time they got blinkers. It was the first time they were dropping for a Maiden Special Weight Company to the main track. And overall, I like the fact that this horse at least showed some speed, showed a liking to the main track, and then just relatively stopped, because some of these horses' turf sprints seem better than the distance races. Right. So I'm thinking the shorten up will be preferred.
Yeah, no, I have no problem with this horse at all. Put it second. The 4 and 14 are my 2 tickets. You're sort of guessing, and the 1 Key West Dude, who I had 4th, you have 2nd in here. It is probably a horse from the pedigree, should be better off on the dirt than the turf, but that makes me wonder why they entered it on the turf to begin with.
Maybe they were doing the rain dance and expecting this race to come off the turf. I'm not so sure, but again, I do like this horse much, much better now that it's on the main track, so I'm just taking a shot with the Exacta. But your 14 does have the speed from the outside and should be tough, especially at this distance.
Can we get a graphic of Bill Kaplan doing a rain dance?
Yeah, let's
see if
try
we can work that out.
All right, we'll move on to the 4th race. 30,000 non-winners of 3 lifetime conditions, 7 furlongs on the main track, and make the rider Shannon Yuski on the 7 Nio Man. The 9 Jolly Dancer is a horse that you and I both agree on in here for Cititard, and quite frankly, Cititard's horses have been running very well so far at the meet.
One of the things I liked about this horse, I didn't think he ran that well last time at Laurel. I can defer to you on that. He's a little bit wide, but had an overall decent trip after breaking pretty well and dropping off. But you know what? Those were tougher horses than these, and he feels like a horse that's well pointed for this spot.
Absolutely. The 3rd place finisher in there, Admiral's War Chest, actually won the Maryland Million Classic. We saw Monkey's Medal, a horse that with back class, and even Behemoth with a lot of back class. But overall, that race was very bizarre. Monkey's Medal, I believe, was coming off a long layoff, and it was a big price. And so I don't know how much stock you can put into that last race. And again, Cititard has had this horse for, it seems, a couple of weeks or at least months now, and probably can turn things around coming out of a tougher race. We'll go.
I'm sorry, Donato. We'll take a look at Donato, running second last time out. What do you have against this horse in here? I'm very curious.
Well, last time out, I kind of handicapped this race on the fact that I thought he got an excellent ride last time, and he drew to the inside. He actually broke from the rail. And now today, I think in an equally tough field, he draws to the way outside 10 furlongs. But I guess you could, the number 10, the post 10. But I guess you could argue that 7 furlongs are coming out of the chute. He has a little bit of run. But that outside post, in comparison to last time, I don't know. I think it's a little bit of a deterrent for me.
Well, here's the thing. He's the speed stretching out. In a sense, I'd rather he has an outside post. It makes it easier for the rider to stay towards the outside on him. So if the track is outside, I think it probably helps him in here. Listen, you obviously have some stamina questions. He stretches out to 7 furlongs, and that's a real question. I just thought he was the horse to beat.
The 6 Rough Passage, though, I thought was interesting because he shouldn't be too far off the pace either. And, some of his 7 furlong performances, although he only has 1 victory at the distance, they've been against very tough horses. Valid, Falling Sky, Grand Shores. And I thought the race that he did win at 7 furlongs was very strong. So he should be forwardly placed, and I think he draws a better post position. So that's why I kind of preferred him. It's not that I don't like Galardonato. He could easily win.
Right.
I just prefer 2 others.
Okay, fair enough. No, listen, I struggle with Rough Passage, who clearly face some better horses. I've got Carly's Warrior in there. You've got the 1 in there as well. I think I just used the 9 and 10, though, in my pick 5.
Okay. Moving on to the 5th race, a 16,000 non-winners, a 2 lifetime event, and originally carded at 7.5 furlongs on the turf. We'll run on the main track at 7 furlongs, a couple of scratches there as well. And the 11, Cynthia's Fury, this filly obviously has the most amount of dirt performances against better company on the main track.
Yeah, that's where I went, because when you start looking through these horses, it's very hard to find. When you've got the 15 as your second choice, that's almost the better starting point in a funny way. You've got the 15 second. I've got the 15 third. Phil Serby's having a good meet. His horse has been running well down here. But, take a look at this horse and look at the speed figures this horse is running overall, and it gives you an idea of the overall quality of the field. So a horse like the 11, who has those back races, if she can get back to them, and at least her form is good on the turf lately, so you can be relatively confident she's in good form, she's going to bury this field.
That was the tipping point for me. If she wasn't running well on the turf lately, I probably would have maybe opted for the 15 Wild in the Streets. But the fact that she has previous main track dirt form actually in quite decent races against much tougher, and she's been in form lately, sitting on a really good second last time out on against non-winners of 2. I gave her the slight preference, but the 15 Wild in the Streets, the reason why I couldn't go with her today is just that was not a good race, not a strong race that she comes out of whatsoever.
It wasn't, and that's why I've got the 8 second in here, because at least with the 8 you can take a guess that maybe this horse will like the dirt. And you look at it, I think even though the figures are comparable, the horse is a better synthetic horse than turf. So maybe it's going to be more of a synthetic dirt type horse. And keep in mind, they had it at Woodbine. It's not like they were ever trying to get on the turf with it. They only did it down here. And you've got a Stormy Atlantic, so you've got a mud pedigree. And really on the dam side, there's enough dirt in there to suggest this horse could handle the dirt.
Okay, very good indeed. That race gets very tricky now, run on the main track. And that's, I would say that this is the type of race where they're probably going to decently bet the main track only entrant coming off of some decent performances against lesser. And that could really pave the way to good value.
I agree. What if they're betting a horse like Skirts on Fire off of the recent figs in the turf? That's a horse that doesn't show much ability to stand in the dirt. And these are the races, even Dee's Causeway. To look at these races and take a look, and horses are going to be overbet. Doesn't mean, listen, sometimes these horses, there was a horse I didn't like at all the other day for drawing away that went to the lead sort of surprisingly and wide of the field. You're going to be wrong.
Yeah.
But you have to, you're playing the horses. You've got to be willing to be wrong to have a chance to be right.
I agree. You have to kind of read in between the lines in some of these races indeed. And with that said, that's races 1 through 5. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk about the 20-cent Rainbow Pick 6. We have a nice carryover, and it does start in race 6 right after this. Welcome back to Gulfstream today, and talking about the 20-cent Rainbow Pick 6. We have a carryover this afternoon over $35,000, and looking at the sequence as well, a couple of late scratches for me, so we'll obviously regroup and show a Pick 6 ticket in the Prado later on today's card. But talking about the strategy, I couldn't necessarily find a single. The only single that you and I were speaking actually before the race, the only single I could perhaps find would be Dearest, the number 7 horse in race 9, but I also kind of like the 2 Miss Inclusive in there. So in my preference, I would probably go too deep in that leg. But to start it off, I think you and I both agree that we would probably just use 3 horses with the 3, 5, and 11.
Yeah, they look like on paper the right ones. You know, First Salute has those good early races and sort of fell apart the next couple of starts. So it's hard to really know where she is at this point, the 11. But obviously those first 2 races, as far as Pretty Philly, just feels like a horse that showed a lot of speed last time out and really didn't run well, but didn't run badly. And I believe that was that goofy race that kind of fell apart. There was a Godolphin horse won that race, I think, right?
I was thinking.
And Sensational Game, I thought, was a dangerous horse. The 3 had a 10-pound bug rider the first time out. Now you get Julian Leparoux for Ian Wilkes, whose horse is off a neat start. You feel like you got speed with one, you have possible improvement with the other. They felt like the right places to go.
And we'll talk about the 5 Pretty Philly as well, because I do kind of like this filly by Unbridled Song. I was interested to see her get to the turf, but Dane Kabisky, again, he does very well with kind of maiden second-time starters. If things don't work out in debut, a lot of the time they come back and completely regroup.
And I'll tell you something. I'm not sure that this isn't the case where I would disagree with him giving up on this horse. They like this horse. For this horse to have been 10-1 in that race, and that's a good family. The Dam's After Funny Moon, who won the coaching club for Christophe Clement a few years ago, it's really a dirt family. And I know it's an Unbridled Song. It didn't cost that much money, but this horse took some money. There were a couple of Pletcher first-time starters in that race and did some running, and then the race fell apart. But I don't think they should completely give up on the possibility this horse might be okay in the dirt.
And overall, a very sharp barn with maidens. So whether it's maiden special weight horses, maiden claimers, the barn has always done very well with their young horses, whether 2-year-olds or 2-year-olds turning 3. So that's something to pay attention to. The 3 Sensational Game as well. I watched the replay. It didn't get off to a great start, and I honestly thought it might have had to do with just not an aggressive ride coming out of the gate.
Yeah, I felt kind of the same way. And you don't want to, listen, every rider has to start somewhere.
Yeah,
and the Eclipse Award winning jockeys were 10-pound bug riders at one time. But on the other hand, much like anything, they wouldn't want to look at their first few rides and say they were going to become a superstar.
Just like us, we probably wouldn't want to look at our first couple of shows.
But
right?
I do like naked baby pictures. You like when your parents bring them out and show them to friends. You get older.
That's always an awkward conversation. All right. Well, enough about naked baby pictures. We'll move on to the 7th race on the card, an allowance optional claiming event. A mile and a 16th on the main track, and we do have the legs of a pretty talented Todd Pletcher runner, the 7 Zambian Dream, who is coming out of the Grade 2 marathon last time out at Keeneland. But some of his back races, including his race at Keeneland 2, starts back. It should be very tough behind Eagle.
I mean, Eagle's a nice horse. This horse ran very well that day. If he takes to a wet track, it's not that big a field. He should be able to get position with Javier early, and he just seems tough. I mean, of the two Pletchers, he feels like the better one. But in fairness to Tennessee, I'm not a big fan of Tennessee. And Tennessee is in a very exclusive group of Todd Pletcher horses that got bet off the board in their debuts and actually lost. He did kind of come out badly, hopped the start and lost all chance, and actually ran pretty well last time considering.
Well, the thing that I kind of like about him is that I did think that he lost all chance coming out of the gate because he kind of lost position and he drew an inside post today.
We're boring, Dennis.
And today, a mile and a 16th. Dennis is always bored. No, a mile and a 16th today, now stretching out to 2 turns, drawing the rail. Hopefully he can get off to a good start, and he very well could show a lot of speed from that rail post position.
But he's got Nauset Beach to deal with, who's not slow. And I thought actually Nauset Beach ran really well last time out to survive that pace as well as he did. Team Colors is an interesting horse in here in that the Dam teammate, she hasn't thrown any horses that have done much running, and she won over $500,000 for the Chief on the turf. We'll see how she handles the track. That there's a lot of moisture in it. It's sloppy now, but it may clear up and dry a little bit before then. I think that horse is a real wild card.
The 4 Tarpey Surprise, I think, is a bit of a wild card, too. Last time out, a good second behind the Truth or Else, and that seems to be a pretty talented horse. And visually, I really liked how he actually ran going the mile at Churchill. Now, you go to some of his back races, and he's capable of running some very bad races, and he's capable of running some very good races. But if you read in between the lines, a lot of the times you can find excuses, whether he was caught in a kind of a heated battle or caught in a hot pace up front and then the race kind of fell apart. Again, if he shows up to the plate today, I definitely think he's a player.
Yeah, I'm using him. He's on my ticket. We'll show my ticket in a second. He does like to finish second and third. I hate the 7 seconds and thirds. But he's also a horse that likes Gulfstream. He's run very well here. I thought he ran extremely well in all 3 starts last year. If we can show that pick 5 ticket, it's 2-4-7 to start it out. And I am singling Deer, as she talked about, 3x4, by 1, by 2, by 4. We'll talk about those races. But I'm going to try to lean on Dearest to get through the sequence.
Okay, 2-4-7 there for the first leg. As we move on to race 8, you're using 4 different horses, and I don't blame you for that because this one's a head scratcher.
We've got about 12 to 13 minutes left in the show. We could spend all of it and still get nowhere in this race. You know, it's like I looked for a hook sometimes in these races, something to go on. My feeling was Seeking the Perfect, who is a bit of an all or not, a bit of a Hail Mary type horse, but is a weekend of Hail Marys. Claimed off of a very low percentage barn that starts a lot of horses. Now, that can go one or two ways. Conventional wisdom is, well, it's a big trainer improvement. Sometimes those horses have been in low percentage barns for a long time, and they're difficult horses to improve off of.
Yeah.
Last time out, though, pulled up on the turf, not a turf horse, looking at her turf races, and now comes here, goes into George Navarro's barn, a good barn, taking a shot. This horse can get resurrected the best races. That might be good enough.
Well, not only that, this is one of the easiest fields that this horse has faced in a very long time. He's faced Open Company. Obviously, you throw out his turf race. So that was the other tipping point for me. High percentage barn claims this horse. The blinkers go on. They're obviously being cognizant of this horse and making the appropriate adjustments. And he's coming out of some of the stronger races. So that's why I landed on him as well. The 4, the Sundrop Kid, again, this is a horse who is definitely capable of winning. But again, he's faced the same company for the past several starts.
Yeah, no, I agree. And the 7 switching to Navarro after getting claimed by the same owners, but given to somebody else before that. I threw Dominate in, a horse who's 0 for 15 in the dirt, but is a horse that could get a piece in here. This is a tough race.
Tough race indeed. We'll move on to the 9th race, an allowance optional claiming event. 7 furlongs on the main track, and here's where the single comes into play. The 7 Dearest, who did win and debut for trainer Gilberto Zerpa. Edgar Zayas gets the call. This filly has been working forwardly in the mornings, as you can see at Gulfstream Park West, but not only that, that, Andy, that was a big race and debut, especially how we saw our Girls of Charmer come back and win here.
Yeah, now our Girls of Charmer, in fairness, had run very well in this Dearest race. Arguably ran as well as Dearest, if not better. And then got on a track that was very kind to speed, but still ran 19 Beyer points higher. The 5th horse ran 5 Beyer points higher. The 6th horse ran 20 Beyer points higher. The 4th horse, I believe, 17 Beyer points higher. The 7th ran 11 Beyer points higher. That's see, to me, that's a key race. I know you got one winner out of it, but what we're getting is horses that are coming back and running really, improving dramatically. So maybe it's just one of these races where the fig is right. They gave the fig that's right. It did come up much higher for Timeform US. It might just be a much better race than the figure suggests.
We'll actually take a look at that replay as well. The 2-length winner, sorry, I forgot to throw to it. The 7 Dearest, or the 8 Dearest, excuse me. As we can see, the 2 at 7-2 in this race are Girls of Charmer, kind of going out there and setting the pace, staying a couple strides off of the rail. And the race really kind of setting up for Dearest, but I thought both of these fillies put in a game performance.
I agree. I like both of these horses. I don't have a knock on Miss Inclusive except for one thing, and she would clearly be my backup. I don't like horses that win big in their debuts and come back and get drowned at 4-5. It's just not a good sign. She did get wired last time out by a race that was pretty much speed friendly.
And I can give her the benefit of the doubt in regards that she actually didn't regress at all in terms of Beyer speed figures.
Agree.
It was an impressive performance in debut. I simply thought that she met tougher.
Well, she ran into a Pletcher Buzzsaw last time out, a horse that really ran for Todd down here. Listen, she is the second horse in this race, and if I was spending a lot more money playing multiple tickets, the 7 would be an A, the 2 would be a B for me, but I just feel like in putting the sequence together, the only way to play it for a smaller amount of money and have a chance to gamble it up would be to take a shot and single Dearest.
You have to. Sometimes you have to take an aggressive approach with those multi-race sequences. I also threw in the 3-4 ton for, first off, the claim for it, Michael Tomlinson. If he can improve this filly or even keep her back form the way he did with Montige, well, it might be all said and done from there.
Ran some race.
We'll move on to the 10th race on the card, the first half of the late daily double allowance optional claiming event, 7 furlongs onto the main track. I also kind of had a tough time with this race, but we both land on the 6 Bulldozer for George Navarro. He had a big day yesterday with XY Jet.
Oh, that horse is good, huh?
Ooh, yeah.
He outruns competition. I don't know about you. I just went to the drop down here. That was really my angle on a horse second off the claim, dropping down. Coming out of a race that was super, super tough. Poor El Botas tried to chase XY Jet a little bit yesterday. That's not something that works out well.
No, not at all. The 0-for-8 record is a little bit discouraging so far this year, but obviously this horse does like this particular distance, so that's always a strong thing to note. And plus, it's second time off the claim for George Navarro. Big drop in class. This is a horse that definitely figures. The 8 social media I used a little bit in here just on the premise that this horse won, although he's coming in off of a pretty decent layoff. He won against decent company, and he's dropping in class. He should be a pace presence in here as well. He was just much the best. Now, that's also another discouraging move because he did win by 6 lengths last time out against $30,000 claimers. Well, I guess it's not really discouraging because he's in a fitting position here. He's not in for the tag at all.
It was a 5-horse field last time. It felt a little more competitive, especially on the front end in here. General Bellamy is a horse that I would never bet in a million years. First of all, he's really dressed up. When he won big that day at Aqueduct, that was Cigar Mile Day of 2014, the goldest of gold rails. So he's dressed up by that performance. I know he came back and ran respectively in the Jerome. The race just completely fell apart behind El Kabir. And worse than that, now he's been away for so long. As much as I respect Ralph Nix, Bill Mott had this horse. I just don't know how good he is overall, and I can't trust his seemingly good efforts.
Fair enough. You use the 4 We're All Set for trainer Peter Walder, and one that actually sits atop a pretty decent effort last time out on an off track, and we very well could see those similar conditions later on.
He feels like a horse that can run well, but also moves up on a wet track.
Okay, well, take a look at the 11th and final race on the card. A maiden 12,500, 5.5 furlongs on the main track. Scratch the 1 in here, and we both land on the 2, Ela for Roderick Rodriguez. Blinkers do go on on, this 3-year-old filly, and she's coming out of that race once again. Dearest, Our Girl's a Charmer. We just talked about that being a key race and how several horses improved their Beyer speed figure significantly. I like the fact that she showed speed. She draws the rail, and she very well could use that to her advantage.
I agree. We'll see how the track is. You don't want her to be, you don't want her to get caught up on the inside. That's a potentially problematic scenario, and you don't know the track's playing. But, once again, we're given the discussion about Dearest earlier. Now you've got a horse, and maybe they were just a little bit disconcerted by how badly she pulled up. Maybe there's some issue, whether it's a breathing issue or something, why she finished as badly as she did. But, man, they're giving up awfully quickly on a horse that's coming out of a super tough maiden race.
And there are a couple of horses that are coming out of decent maiden special weight races, too. The 6 Perfect Patty is another one. We saw debut at Gulfstream Park West against Maiden Special Weight Company, and actually going off at 5-1.
Right.
So decently bet in debut. They went strong fractions, 22-1, 45-1 for the half as well. Now, first time in the Peter Walder barn, the big drop in class.
No, I know. This is a funny horse. I mean, it's sold for $1,500, so you're wondering if it has a couple of heads when it comes out. But as you say, took money first time out at 5-1, and ran so badly that either the horse just can't run at all, which is always a possibility, or there's an excuse, and now you go in the Walder barn, which is never a bad thing. And what horse interested me a little bit was Glotana again, the 11 horse. This is actually a horse that comes from a reasonable family. It's a first foal, but the dam was actually pretty good. I know this was kind of an interesting horse, a homebred for these connections, but I believe they raced this, the mare as well, the dam as well, so maybe that horse could be a little interesting as a firster.
I thought the 5, Sam's Princess, was a little interesting. Obviously, it's interesting that it's not interesting that they debuted this horse on the turf, because it seems like it definitely figures with the turf pedigree. However, now with the drop in class, Jane Sibeli, we've showed these statistics time and time before, turf to dirt angles in maiden races, she does very well in.
No, listen, she's a super, super dangerous trainer. You're right. She is good turf to dirt. The problem is this is an intentional turf to dirt. And it's hard, one of the things, I wish there was a stat in Formulator that was turf to scheduled dirt. Because, you will separate them yourself because you can see the races that are taken off the turf and you can just do the numbers yourself. But I think it's important to look at those. A trainer who makes the turf to dirt move with a maiden, was it just because it got rained off? And then you get the MTO angle. A lot of things to look at. But in relative terms, when I used to come here in the mid-90s, there was no such thing as Formulator, and you didn't have computers with the discs and the breeding, and it was a whole different story, and it's a lot of work now. It was really a lot of work back then.
And you and I both spoke about this, too, when races are off the turf onto the main track, even when you're looking at the past performances, you can't really decipher whether a horse was entered for main track only or just entered in the body of the race. You kind of have to go and do your homework even more so and see, well, was this horse really running on the turf in the past and such. But I wish that there would be something like that on the past performances.
An asterisk or something in the PPs and off the turf races to suggest just a sign that says entered MTO would be a very helpful, especially when you see like first time starters and maidens and such. It'd be nice to know if they were entered for the dirt or not, but there's always things you want to know in racing, and frankly, it's good that there's still a few things. If you keep your records and you look them up, there's a reward for them, because we've all given out too much information as it is. People used to have to work for their information in horse racing, and sometimes you got $19 on horses that pay $9 now.
That is very true. We work for it sometimes, most of the time. And, well, once again, all races originally carded for the turf will be run on the main track. The main track is currently listed as sloppy right now, but we do have a nice carryover in the pick 6 that starts into today's 6th race on this 11 race program. Reminder, we do race tomorrow, 12:35 p.m. post. Anything you want to say?
No, I have nothing left to say, but we'll be saying some more, even though I have nothing to say, in about 15 minutes.
Okay, sounds excellent. And thank you once again for joining us here on Gulfstream today. Larry Comas will be up next with Scratches and Changes. Best of luck.